I'm Pranjal, co-founder of Better Place Health. When I was 26, I got this incredible opportunity to be the CEO of a large multinational company in Southeast Asia. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, but I had no idea what I was signing up for. We were present in 7 countries. There were more than 300 people that were employed by the company. And all I knew was that it was a sinking ship. And that didn't scare me at all, probably because I was 26. There was a very clear expectation that the investors had, which was to either turn the company around or eventually sell it off. And they believed I could do it. So I believed them too. Uh, I don't know if I was the right person for the job, but I was definitely up for it. I spent 3 years trying to do exactly that. It was one of the most challenging, excruciatingly painful, yet rewarding things that I have ever done in my life. Getting the business back on its feet, figuring out what's wrong with the team, shutting down businesses that weren't working for us, all the while also fundraising and then potentially looking for the M&A route to secure our position in the market. There was just so much that was happening. And the entire team was very young. But I remember that at one point I met and onboarded this gentleman to head our product team. He was much older than me. He was in his 40s then. And he told me that, I understand this model. They find young people who have a belly full of fire to run these projects. And you know what? Maybe you will do well, maybe you won't. But I can guarantee you that you will walk away from this project completely burnt out. And I really liked and respected him. So that night when I came home, I thought about the phrase burnout. It was the first time in my life. I know it may not sound like it, but it was the first time in my life that I'd heard that word. And I didn't Google it because it's very self-explanatory, right? So I figured what he meant was that I'm going to be left extremely tired and exhausted by this process. And I didn't see that as a bad outcome because I thought, so what? I'll be tired, I'll recover, I'll do something else. It was only 3 years later when we had finally sold the company after going to hell and back that I realized the true meaning of the word burnout. I had no interest left in anything. I would be sitting in high profile meetings and I would be completely zoned out. And I had no idea what was going on with me. I was so scared. 6 months in, I was so scared because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I wasn't sure if I'll ever be interested in anything again. And I couldn't figure out why. Where is my fire? Where is my passion? I used to always be so excited about any conversation related to business. But I just had no interest left in anything. I think that is when I started looking for a solution. I still didn't know that I was burnt out, you know. Uh, I knew that I had been through a difficult time, and I always, that always, when you go through a difficult time, that always leads you to ask existential questions. And when you ask existential questions, it always pushes you towards spirituality. Because where else do you find the answers to existential questions, right? Now I know that perhaps in the office of a therapist as well, but I didn't know it back then. So I spent a year almost just learning 50 different forms of meditation. And I would meditate for hours every day, and I would write and I would talk to people who were in a similar position and so on. And that one year was transformative for me in a lot of ways that I didn't realize then. And the gravity of it continues to hit me even today. But more than anything else, I think what I realized was that that I was on a very slow path of recovery with no clear understanding of what had happened and what would make me better. Because that's the thing with meditation and spirituality. Unless you have somebody guiding you into the process, you're kind of on your own. And you require a lot of consistent dedication and hard work to stay on that path. right? And even after putting 1 year and so many hours into it, I still hadn't even scratched the surface, and I knew it. And during that year, as I shared my story of feeling burnt out with so many people, I realized most people around me were going through something similar. So many of my close friends, I went to a B school. Most people ended up in high stakes jobs. Most people were feeling that way and they didn't know what to do about it. I think that is the lack of awareness that genuinely exists. You don't know what's going on with you. So once I realized that meditation is hard and it's not necessarily putting me on the path back to recovery as fast as I would like it to, I started looking for alternatives. And that's sort of my first foray into mental health when I realized that, hey, this is actually a structured way where you have a professional guide who will sit with you and help you understand what you're going through, what's wrong with you, and then help you work through those things till you get better. So that was my introduction to therapy. And since then, I sort of tried many different things. And of course, I can tell you with 100% confidence that I made a complete recovery from that burnout, whatever it was, right? Because I feel like myself again. And it's been a while now. I feel that same energy, that passion, that fire to do things that I always had. So I think that is sort of where my foray into mental health began. Obviously, not as a business, just as a user. And when I saw so many people around me struggling, one, to identify that something is wrong with them, two, after they had identified, to find the right help, to even identify who the right person was, I figured, okay, why not this? So when I moved back to India, it was very clear to me that I wanted to build a business in a space that I was passionate about. I actually went through a bunch of ideas, and mental health was one of them. Another key factor in my decision was that in my 30s, I wanted to start the business with somebody who was an industry expert because I didn't want to have to break into a new industry all by myself. And I think that's where, when I started my conversations with Pranav, given his background and his father's background in the field of psychiatry and psychology in New Delhi, I got the confidence that I needed that these are the right people to partner with. And for more reasons than one, the fact that they had already built and scaled a successful mental health business was, of course, a big factor. But the fact that when I spent time with Dr. Mittal, I saw in him the kind of ethical doctor who will put his ethics above all else in the business, that I knew that this is the type of person I would want if I was seeking treatment, right? So I knew that he will set the right fundamentals for the business for us to aspire to as we scale up. So I think that's where it started. And then, of course, the next question is that, hey, you want to build something in mental health, but what do you want to do? There are people who are building self help apps, there are people who are creating marketplaces and working with 100 different psychologists. Then there are standalone clinics, there are hospitals. So, where are you going to be present, right? So, I think that itself was a very long journey for us. Of course, driven by the insights that Pranav and Dr. Sunil already brought from what they were doing previously, we realized very clearly that there is a need in the market, that there are people who are currently struggling with mental health issues and they are just not finding the right help because of many reasons. One being that it's not discoverable, but two being because it's also not widely available. The kind of quality help that, like I said, I would want for myself. So we spoke to a lot of people and they said that, yes, I've met with a psychiatrist and I've spent between 5 to 15 minutes with them. But, I'm on medication, but I would rather do therapy. Or we spoke to people who were doing therapy but actually needed medication. And the first thing we realized was that there are not enough people in the North Indian region who are providing psychiatry and psychology as an integrated service. So that became our first pillar, where we said that any mental health disorder cannot be looked at in isolation. There is a biopsychosocial element to each mental health issue, and we have to cater to all of them. I can't just give you medication and tell you to go seek therapy elsewhere, or vice versa, right? So that sort of became the first thing. Then the second problem that we looked at was the fact that the misdiagnosis rate not just in India, but globally, is so high. And yes, one part of it is the fact that your doctor doesn't have enough time that they're spending with you. In fact, there were doctors themselves who told us that, we do spot diagnosis because I only have 5 minutes to see a patient. The barrage is just so huge that we realized that one, for a person to open up to you about their deepest, darkest problems, and two, for you to give them the right diagnosis, you need to spend a long amount of time with them. That sort of became our second pillar, that you come here, we are going to spend as much time as you need with you, and we will ensure that we do our best to give you the right diagnosis so that you are on the shortest path to recovery. And then the third thing that we realized was that to truly build a successful mental health company that scales outside of Delhi, North India, and then pan India, we need to work with the best doctors, right? So it also became very important for us to understand that what will make an organization like ours attractive to them. There are very few psychiatrists in this country. Why would they want to come and work for us, right? So we spent a considerable amount of time, and of course we've not done any of that so far because we've only launched our first clinic, but we've spent a lot of time understanding that, hey, as a doctor, these are the four things that matter to you, and as a brand, can we provide them to you so that we can have the best team possible in one place. So that's sort of where it began. We realized that we want to cater to the clinical side of the problems because that's where people need the most help. And they're already out there looking for solutions. Do we eventually want to scale up and do, at scale online therapy and work with hundreds of psychologists? Yes, but we are not there today. Today, we are very focused on building an offline first model because we believe that if you have a serious problem, then the best help that can be given to you is in person. You sit across the table from your psychiatrist and psychologist, and you will get better fast. So, the point is not that you just make progress in your mental health journey. We genuinely want you to recover fast. And that is sort of how we've also developed our programs around that, starting with the right diagnosis and a very targeted and personalized therapy program. Our aim is to get you out of our clinics in maximum 12 weeks. So, 6 months ago, we launched our first clinic. We were very fortunate to launch it inside the National Heart Institute, which is one of the most well reputed hospitals in South Delhi. I think it also really lines up with the ethics that I was talking about earlier because National Heart is known to be that hospital to anyone who's ever sought treatment there. And that is sort of a business model that we want to experiment with going forward as well. Because one of the things that we believe is that when you look at any issue that people are getting admitted to a hospital for, there is a big psychiatric comorbidity that exists. For example, if you have a cardiac issue, almost 40% of people who have cardiac issues, serious cardiac issues, also have underlying depression or anxiety. If you have a pulmonology related issue, if you have a gastroenterology related issue, the comorbid existence of depression and anxiety and other psychiatric disorders also is huge. So we want to be that division inside a hospital that can take care of, these services as and when patients need them. And we also aim to launch independent clinics.